Hey, what's up, everybody? So I wanted to come in here and talk about prayer. Um, and the other night, the reason why I started thinking about this, I do talk about this in um, my coaching program, my 8-week coaching program. But the other night, it was either in Facebook or it was in like an email message I got. It was one of these things that said, basically everybody pray tonight between 9 o'clock and 9:01. And the idea being that there's a lot of power in prayer, and that the more people that did it, the bigger effect we can have on this coronavirus thing. And it got me thinking about prayer, and it's not something that I push very hard with people that I work with, both in my clinical practice and in my coaching, um, because I think it can be a sensitive topic for people, and then it brings up the sort of idea of like, does God exist, and stuff like that. So I want to tell you a little bit of a story of when I was in graduate school. But in my coaching program, um, I really what I really do is I ask people very simply to take a challenge where they try praying for a day and see if they notice any effects from that. So in other words, it's not about like belief in God or believing in a certain like religious tradition or anything like that, but it's about doing the practice and then seeing what the effect is. And that's, otherwise known as experiential practice. So when I do yoga, it's not so much about the practice of yoga, but the effect that yoga has on my life. That when I walk away from that yoga session, I feel more present, I feel more relaxed, um, I feel more positive. So it's the effect of the practice that I do. And wellness is a lot like that. So you don't bring wellness into your life by just wishing it so. You actually have to do things to achieve the effect. So when I do my coaching program, and by the way, if you have any questions, um, feel free to drop a comment below. And then in general, if you're watching this after the fact, hey Sean, um, watching this after the fact, please comment below and let me know what you think. So in my program, I basically tell people, try praying for the day and see how it goes. I have noticed, so I got into, I meditate, I pray every day. I have noticed that, and I am not like a really big, like, this is how I believe and this is the type of God that I believe in. I simply pray and notice that things go better when I do that. And that's the effect that I'm talking about. And that's about as simple as I keep this. Um, and I don't really know, as a human being, if there's some, white bearded person up in the sky that when I pray comes down and helps me. I don't know that that's the case. I just know that when I do it, things go better. Like I'll be going into, like, maybe like a good example is like a meeting at work. Um, and I'm really nervous about it. If I have the mindfulness enough to say a prayer before I do that, I have noticed that things go better. And I have this realization as I like come out of the meeting that, like, wow, that went really well. It went much better than I thought it would. And maybe it was just me changing my mindset, or maybe it is. Maybe when I pray, something happens that sort of changes the outcomes. I don't know, but again, I my suggestion is that you try it, you do it, and see what the effect is. So, just an interesting story. when I was in graduate school, I was in graduate school for mental health counseling, and we had to. It was like I think it was in the second year. We had to start preparing for our master thesis, our master's project, and you kind of had to think about what you wanted to do, and then do a bunch of research and find a topic, um, and then find research that sort of supports the thesis or the idea that you had. And um, I was interested in spirituality. I was interested in meditation and mindfulness. I was interested in the 12 steps, and really what they otherwise something known as transpersonal psychology, which is bringing spirituality into psychology. And I ended up doing. Hey, Brittany. I ended up settling on a topic. My graduate thesis was mindfulness based stress reduction for anxiety disorders. That's what I ended up doing. Mindfulness based stress reduction is this awesome 8-week program by Jon Kabat-Zinn. If you're not aware of it, really great. It's a very manualized approach to meditation and mindfulness. That's what I settled on. But so the point of me telling this story was that I um, I was looking around for ways to sort of bring spirituality into it, or mindfulness based approaches, and I looked at a lot of different studies. And um, as I was doing this, took like several months of research. As I was doing it, I started every now and then I would come upon a study, and I wish I had taken down what these studies were. I would come upon a study um, that utilized one of the control groups was people that prayed. So in other words, it'd be something like, the study was on reducing anxiety or reducing depression, and you'd have a group that did like cognitive behavioral therapy, and then you'd have a group that did like medications, and then you'd have a group that did prayer. Um, and like hands down, every single um, research study that I saw that included a prayer control group, um, the prayer group like knocked the socks out of everybody else. Like, in other words, the people that prayed had better outcomes by far than the people taking medication. And by the way, please don't stop taking your medications. I'm not saying get off medication. I'm not knocking medication. I'm just using it as an example. Um, or people that were even like meditating, or people that were doing cognitive behavioral therapy. The prayer people always won and I didn't see a lot of studies that included that, but every single one, the outcomes were really high for prayer, and it was really interesting. And I did not end up doing prayer as my senior thesis. I think maybe I tried, and it just didn't go over very well with my professor. So I, I wanted to come on here and talk about it, because I think that, and again, if you guys have questions, comments, please do comment below. Even after I'm done with this video, I'm happy to keep this conversation going. Um, um, Part of the reason I wanted to come on here and talk about this is not only because I feel really strongly about it in terms of general wellness. I don't think this is the only way. I think a lot of people think that they can pray themselves into wellness, and they sort of like ignore nutrition, and they ignore exercise, they ignore meditation. Wellness is about bringing together a whole bunch of things into a daily routine that includes prayer. But I think that in times like this, it's kind of like that thing, like, like when you're driving down the highway and the blue lights come on behind you, and all of a sudden we start praying when we think we're in trouble. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people are thinking about this. A lot of people are utilizing prayer because of what's going on with the coronavirus. And so I thought it was a good opportunity for me to talk about it. And again, I don't, I came on here, to hear, I'd really like to hear you guys' thoughts on this. Do you think it's a real thing that prayer helps? And again, I really, the longer the more I grow spiritually in my life, the less I really care about what God actually is, or whether there actually is a God. There's so many different traditions that sort of show you different ways to believe, and I think they all point towards the same thing, which is we are alive. There's spirit, and there's a thing in life that is larger than ourselves, but that is also within us and a part of us. And I would say, aside from probably nutrition in terms of wellness, I would say that the most profound positive effects that I have had in my life have come from me being open to and willing to pray and see what happens, and to consider spiritual ways of thinking. I don't know any other way to put it than that. So again, I just wanted to come on here and talk a little bit about that. It's something that I don't, again, force down people's throats in my coaching, but I do think it's really, really powerful, and I wanted to get everybody's thoughts on that. I'm trying to get some conversations going on in here, and so if you watch this, if you're watching it now, please do comment and let me know what you think. And if you do pray. I think the world needs it. I do think prayer changes things. And one last thought before I go, as I was saying, I think prayer changes things. Emmett Fox. So if a lot of you guys don't know who Emmett Fox is, he was an author and a speaker. I think it was, my understanding is he was speaking to really large audiences, stadiums of audiences, back around the time that AA was starting back in the 1930s, and he wrote a bunch of books. Now, he was specifically Christian, but it was for the 1930s. Really, really new age Christianity. So if you have maybe, some people have different ideas about Christianity. This when I started reading Emmett Fox, I started really to think about spirituality and the Christian faith differently. And I'm not specifically Christian, but I do believe it's a great tradition. But Emmett Fox, I don't know what book it was in. He has a book called Sermon on the Mount, which is a good book to start with if you're interested in reading. And his writing is so simple. It's like you read one paragraph and you immediately have something you can apply in your life. It's really, his writing is so clear and profound. But there's a book that he wrote, and I can't remember which one it was, but he first talks about karma, which is the concept of, as I think and do, it comes back to me. So if he basically says, if you have you have to watch your thoughts really carefully, because if you have a negative thought, that comes back to you in the form of karma, which is interesting because he's a Christian oriented author. And karma is typically associated with Eastern traditions, Buddhism, and things like that. But he says it's not only biblical, but it's true that these things happen. So if you've ever had a really bad day where you're having tons of negative thoughts, and then sort of things start to escalate and get worse and worse and worse, and it's like hard to get out of it, that's karma, right? What you put out there comes back to you, that kind of idea, which is a really scary thought. but Emmett Fox basically says in one of his books, basically says that he calls it Christ or karma, but he basically says that prayer. So let's say that you have done a lot of things that are going to bring bad karma to you. That prayer actually supersedes karma, so that you can actually get out of bad karma by praying. He talks about it in terms of the Christ idea, and then relates it to praying, and basically says that karma is true except for the extent that you pray. And so it made me think about that in terms of how prayer can change things. So if you've gotten yourself in a bad way, karmically, I don't know if that's a word or not, prayer can get you out of that. So, and that makes me, and so now I'm going down all these rabbit holes, but that makes me think about, like, if I think about like my drinking and drugging years, which were a lot of years where I did sort of like a lot of really bad things, and I had and all the years of like negative thinking and judging people and just being an asshole is really, really what it comes down to. And then I get into recovery and into AA and into the 12 steps, and they immediately start telling me to pray and be open to spirituality. Like the karma in my life that I built up from being an asshole for a lot of years, I should not be doing as good as I am right now. I should not have the life that I have right now. I mean, I have a secure life, a beautiful family, a beautiful house. I've had a great career so far, all these great things in my life. The karma that I created in a lot of years in my life from all the negativity and all the things that I did out there, using and drugging and all that stuff. I should not have the life that I have right now. And I think that had to do with what Emmett Fox is talking about, which is I started working a spiritual program and praying, and got out of some of that negative karma that came my way by doing so. And I think that's kind of like what they talk about being saved. So anyway, I'm going down a lot of rabbit holes. Comment, let me know what you think. But the point of all this for me, if you're out there and you're somebody who does pray, that's great. If you're somebody that doesn't and you want to check it out, like I said, in my coaching program, all I ask people to do is give it a try and see what the effect is. And you don't have to believe in a certain way to do that. Just go to like the bathroom and like secretly pray, or something comes up, pray about it and see if what happens, see if things work out better as a result of doing that. So it's, again, an experiential process. So anyway, that's about it. Again, if you're watching this after the fact, please do comment. Let me know what you think. I'd love to have more conversation about this, and hope everybody has a really great day, and look forward to hearing from everybody in the group. Thanks.